welcome back to the show, everybody. Today we have an exciting episode with Brian Reilly, the president of DP Management. And this is going to be an interesting take on how he is an advisor to their clients and their company advises their clients in the real estate industry, as well as some of that from a leader in a business and some of his perspective in the risk management space and how he views that. So look forward to the show and enjoy it.
Welcome to the Getting Past the Premium podcast, where we focus on breaking down risk management problems bit by bit until we find a solution. If you would like to discuss anything you hear on GPP with us, please reach out using the links in the description. Enjoy today's episode.
All right, well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, welcome, Brian. Glad to be here. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, we're excited. So I think this is going to give everybody kind of a little bit different perspective, conversation, not necessarily in the insurance and risk management industry, right? So why don't you give everybody kind of your background, what you do on a daily basis, who you are, and go from there.
Well, my name's Brian Reilly, and I've been president of DP for, a few years now. But I've been with the company for 20 years. And so I've been in commercial real estate for that long. I've been with DP that whole time. I was in mortgage brokering a little bit before that. And actually, my first job out of college was at UNMC. And I got my MBA while I was there and then transitioned into commercial real estate. So really like medical as well. What I do on a daily basis is we've got a company that does management, leasing, and brokerage. We handle most of the major assets for the general partners of DP. Some of those guys have been partners for 50 or more years. And so we take care of their assets. We keep them leased up. We when they need them sold or when they want to buy something else, we help them with brokering those. And then we also do third-party business. We're not one of the larger third-party operators in town. It's probably about 40% of our business, maybe a little more. And it's growing. That's a good thing. And on a day-to-day basis, what I do is I keep that wheel moving. I hate to say it, but most of my job is talking. and I go home exhausted at night because a lot of what I do is listen to what people are doing and then help them try and solve problems. I always tell people I'm in the problem-solving business and I'm in the people business. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Try to help them out.
Well, I think that's why it's a great perspective for today. In the problem-solving business, a lot of what you do in risk management is thinking through problems and what's the worst-case scenario that can happen. And so on the show, before the show, we were talking, there's a lot of risk when it comes to real estate, right? And how, you are able to help your clients through that and advise them around that. So just be curious how you view that, more being that advisor to a client when it comes to a real estate transaction or.
Yeah, it's funny. So we do have that commonality between insurance and real estate about risk management because the term I use in real estate is I call it trapdoors because the process itself, not everybody, many people buy a home, and so they think that the process is sort of like that. It's nothing like it. And from the time that you actually acquire the property, from that point on, the process is very different and has many trapdoors. And so when I am working with a client, I try to put myself in their perspective, in their shoes, and listen to their objectives. And then, guide them through that. And a lot of what I do is based on experience and history and, what have I learned over the years. And by the way, I'm tapping that because I made some notes because I was like,
I came prepared.
Exactly. I don't what do I got to talk about?
What am I getting into?
Yeah, exactly. I've never done a podcast before.
First for everything.
Yeah. But, part of my background, so when I first started at DP, it was called Dow Properties back then. And, I was brought in because I had the MBA skill set. So I could talk the language of accounting and finance and management, HR, and all of the different aspects of it. And at the time, they had different issues that they needed to deal with. So I came in from a management standpoint, came out of the mortgage business and into the management business. And I learned the commercial real estate business through the management side. And so when I'm working with a client, a lot of times I will look at a property that they're looking at acquiring or looking at leasing, or conversely, they're looking at disposing, selling. And I'll try to point out things that I've seen in my history. And when you're in management first, you learn how properties operate, and it is an amazing tutorial or a way to learn.
Learning curve.
Yeah. So that because if you're in the sales business first, generally, you learn how to move property. You learn how to make deals and how to fill your hopper and continue to make deals. So from an advisory standpoint, that's how I approach it. Is here are some trapdoors I've learned, stepped on a few, fallen through, seen other people fall through some, and here's what I would suggest to avoid those as we walk our way through this this maze.
It's a good analogy. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah. Do you get business because of your specific advice and guidance? Like, is that why people are coming to you? Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's interesting. Just today, I was working on a new piece of business that a client is going to send to us because, and I feel it's probably related to some of the things that we've done so far in guidance and in leasing and how we approach things. But a lot of that's based on our experience and the things we've learned and how we can apply it and benefit.
Yeah.
Be an advisor to the client.
So give us an example or two on your most where you can add what trapdoor can you add the most value to a client if I'm coming to you, or give me a couple examples of what you're talking about.
Okay, so
you don't have to give away your secret sauce.
No, that's all right. There's no secret sauce. Well, one recently that we've really encountered is that in finance. Earlier, we were talking about how financing is a potential risk source. Okay, you'll buy a house and you'll put a mortgage on the house and you pay it down over time, right? And so you think that the same analogy is true with a commercial property. And so you might go to a bank, or you might go to an insurance company, or go to a conduit. And in the past 10 years, I've seen changes in that environment that are specific to our industry that I would advise a tenant about, or a landowner about, particularly about conduit financing. We've learned a few hard lessons in the last 10 years about, I'll give you an example. So let's say you own a shopping center and you've got an anchor tenant, and there's language in that loan that states that if the anchor tenant closes or some other provision comes into play, then the rents have to start going to the lender rather than to you as a management company on behalf of the owner. It's called a Lockbox Provision, and what that does is hard to imagine until you've been through it and you've seen a property owner go through that, because it's abstract until you see it. And once you've seen it in action, you had to work through the cash flow management of, hey, the rents are going to that guy, and he's only going to give me this much to keep your property operating. And so, Mr. Owner, you're going to need to write checks into here, even though you got plenty of cash sitting over there. That is something that maybe when you're signing the loan, you're going, that could happen. But when you've seen it happen, that is a huge, I can look somebody in the eye and say, here's something you want to think about, because I've seen this scenario. So that's just one that comes to mind.
That's a great example. So how do you, sometimes we get that example where it's more of almost you have to live it sometimes. Mm-hmm. But if you're, somebody that hasn't been in the industry for 10 years plus, whatever it is, how do you think that those folks can get that same level of, I want to say experience, but, obviously they're going to have to learn somehow on how to advise a client on, say, that example, when maybe they haven't lived it.
The only advice I give to somebody like that is, I do actually what I said earlier about people who manage and also people who lease. Value in a commercial property is created by bringing in a tenant who then, pays you rent. Your rent, you pay your mortgage, you pay your operating expenses, and then you have hopefully a return on your investment. And so understanding how that lease works and understanding how the management of the property works, that's really where I think the value is created that will help a salesperson later on. If they have a good relationship with their property management team, because a sales agent might have 3 or 4 different property managers that they work with. And then a leasing agent who might also be a sales agent. I mean, if they have a good relationship with their manager, or they just have learned over the years about leasing before they start trying to, really work with investment property. There's a lot of lessons that can be learned through that process. I would say listen carefully to the people, who are in the office every day. They're not the ones out there, having lunch with the business owners and doing the sort of the fun things that the sales agents get to do. But boy, their advice and their knowledge and their stories are going to benefit you. It's a huge asset to have that relationship.
Is that kind of from that get a mentor type of model? I know that's something we've talked about, and a lot of folks in our industry talk about, is that mentorship can be so impactful. I don't know if you've had experienced that over the years, but I know that that's a way, as a younger, just less experienced salesperson, that you can get that knowledge, get that experience is through somebody else vicariously.
That's a great suggestion, actually, or comment, because I have had some good mentors in my life. I'll tell you a story about that. You guys like stories, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
See, I also find that stories are a great way to be an advisor.
Oh, 100% story.
Yeah.
You master storytelling, and
because
you're light years ahead.
It just helps people relate. Well, this is the only client that I recall that's ever fired me as a manager, as a management company. This was in like 2006 or 5. I was fairly new in the business. And the client was sitting across the table from me, and I had the asset manager sitting right here. And he's going through the books and asking questions, and the asset manager is giving answers that are kind of not as detailed as what he would have expected or liked. And he comes across one that I'll never forget. He says, $90 for a wax ring. So help me understand this. So you've got a maintenance person on staff, but we hired a plumber to put in a $90 wax ring. And she says, well, yeah, that's what a plumber does. At the time, she did not understand. Later, she did after I explained to her. That's something I can do. In fact, that created in my company what's called the Reilly rule. From that point on, it's like if Brian can change or do something, then we expect your maintenance people to be able to do it. And my maintenance people, if they see this podcast, they're going to laugh. Because that is absolutely true. I mean, I can change a sprinkler head. There's stuff that you were able to do in your house, right? Okay. Well, he's like, okay. Keeps going. At the end of it, he's like, okay, thank you. And then she left, and I was thinking, okay, well, let's talk about what's next, business, whatever. He goes, Brian, I think we're going to go another direction. And I was like, what? He says, I think we're going to need to change management companies. And I wasn't ready for that. So, but I was like, okay, and he explained to me, here are the things that I expected, and here's what I needed to know. And you weren't giving me the answers I needed. So from that point on, I made it my mission to stay in touch with him and to tell him over time, number one, that I wasn't bitter about that, and number two, that I'd learned from that. And so over the years, the relationship actually flipped, and he became, instead of being my mentor over time, he became a guy that came to me, and he'd be like, hey, Brian, I've got this apartment complex, and here's what I'm dealing with. what do you suggest? Or what are you doing?
That's awesome.
And things change. Marketing changes over time. Apartment properties, it used to be we had the for rent book, right? Well, now everything's, you go looking for an apartment on your phone, right? And, so he's coming to me going, what are you using? How are you getting, residents to come in here? And so that's I love that because my mentor has become my friend.
Yeah.
And now he trusts me. He's asking me for advice. So that's a great, if you can find mentors like that, hopefully you don't have to lose business to do it. but I think,
it was an expensive at first mentorship, but it paid off dividends.
It was.
A lot of people wouldn't do that, though. I mean, kudos to you for being humble and having the right mindset and everything else. A lot of people would have been pissed off and just
now that I think about it,
been over.
Yeah, I forgot. He actually gave me a listing later on too.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, he's so he's still a guy I stay in touch with. And I've had another. One of my best mentors was a guy that was at my competitor's office. He was at one of the big firms in town.
Yeah.
But because we worked on we had a property that we worked on together for many years. Actually, it was kind of a partnership between the two. He was a owner partner, and we were an owner partner, and we managed and they lease. And I got to know the man, and I enjoyed getting to know him and going to lunch with him. And again, actually, he would ask me questions that were more management oriented that I'm more familiar with, and I'd ask him lots of sales questions. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Mentors are a great thing. And in fact, I'll say if I get a chance to mentor somebody young, I love doing it because it's the favor that was given to me, and I love to pass that favor on.
There's an awesome TED Talk out there called The Coach, and go listen to it if you haven't listened to it. It's a doctor who was he was in the prime of his career, and he knew that he was leaving some opportunity on the table. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, he brought in a coach to literally study every single one of his moves during surgery. And it was amazing, everything that he was doing, not necessarily wrong, but he could do it more efficient. And if he would have changed this and brought the tool bench over here instead of having to walk around the bed 4 times to go do it, and little things, like, he would have much better outcomes in healthcare. And so the outside perspective is key.
It's called The Coach.
I think so, but don't quote me.
I'll find it. I made it down.
Yeah.
I love that. That's fantastic. There's this great guy.
Which is why LeBron James can't just run the whole team.
He's got a coach.
So Daly, Jack Daly,
John.
you ever heard of him?
Jack Daly, huh? That actually sounds familiar.
He is a sales coach, and one of the things I was just at a session. In fact, he's got a video session coming up here soon. Guy's amazingly motivating. He's run a marathon on every continent. And he started running marathons and doing.
Sounds like you.
He started doing.
Yeah.
He started doing triathlons. I want to say at age 50, and he's like, I want to say 70 now, and he's done one on every continent.
Jeez.
But one of his things is he hired a coach.
Yeah.
He's telling us in this sales presentation, he's like, look, I hired a coach for nutrition. I hired a coach for my running style, my swimming, biking, all this stuff. He's like, I got an expert for each one of these things. And his point is like, how do you get better if you don't have a coach? And so, we take that, feedback, and, right now, actually, this conversation was just within the last month or so. We're talking about going through role, not necessarily role play, but role conversations, where we can help each other understand. One of the big things that I picked up from that is the listening. Are you listening actively? In our business as advisors, with somebody I was meeting with today, I could tell as I was asking, okay, how many square feet do you need? The typical types of questions. But I could tell that there were irritants in the conversation. And so I asked, I was like, what is it irritating you about your existing space?
Yeah.
Well, we want to try and avoid those things when we go to a new space. So,
Yeah,
those are key. Those are key.
Totally.
Well,
I was going to say our exercise, and then I'll let you ask, but we have an exercise that we do internally where you have a conversation, but if I'm the one role playing or whatever, I can only ask you questions, but I can only ask questions about the last thing you said. So I have to really listen. I can't be thinking about the 3 things ago that you said that I might want to bring back up. It's got to be about you have to keep the conversation going about exactly what you're talking about. You can't let your mind wander, or else you get to the point where like, yeah, I wasn't listening to that. What'd you say? Because we all do that, but you can usually in a normal conversation, you can weave your way out of it.
Yeah.
But when you're being an advisor and you miss those things, you miss those cues that are irritants, you're missing opportunity to help your client. So,
yeah,
I
100%.
think that's a really valuable exercise.
What percentage should somebody be listening versus talking if you're in some sort of sales capacity?
In my opinion, not just even in sales, but in my supervisory role when I'm dealing with my staff, I actually find myself going, just you gotta, even though there's so much experience and so much information that I have to translate, but it is important to listen. I mean, in a sales capacity, I try to listen 80% at least, and I make notes. I use my tools to make notes and try to engage so that I can. I find that just making notes is going to help me remember things with those conversations, and then I can go back.
Slows you down a little bit, maybe, and
it does.
Keeps you at a good pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's something common that we run across, and this is great advice for advisors and sales people too. To just you can go a long way by saying, tell me more about that, and just shutting up and listening.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times you only need like 2 or 3 of those. Like, well, what do you mean by that? Or tell me a little more. And before you know it, 45 minutes has gone by and you know everything that was on top of their mind. And you're in a completely different spot than if you would have just went in and said, oh, client, here's what you need and here's why you need it. And it's like, well, you didn't even hear me.
One other thing that came to mind as you're describing that is that, people don't want to be sold, but they'd like to buy.
Yeah.
Typically they want to, buy real estate. They know they need.
Should be a really exciting thing too. You close on a nice piece of real estate and stuff, like you should be popping champagne bottles.
Absolutely. But what I find is, I don't want to sell them on it. It's more a matter of like, in fact, I think if you listen carefully in conversations, you'll end up talking yourself out of a lot of business or because you'll hear and you'll understand that this is not going to meet that need or solve that problem that you're looking for. But then you'll get the situation like the client I was telling you about, who's like, you know what, I want to send you more business, because they will appreciate that you're not just going after the low hanging fruit. You're looking for the the sturdy tree.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. So we were, not to transition away from that piece, but we were talking before, you have an interesting perspective kind of from the business owner leader side as well in working with risk management and the risk management insurance industry. Maybe give your perspective and kind of your experience over the years on how you've worked with people, better or worse or whatever.
Yeah, that's so. Yeah, insurance is just from listening to your podcast. I was telling you, you don't want to be commoditized. Yeah. You do want to be that relationship that comes into play when you're sitting down with your attorney, your CPA, your real estate advisor, and your insurance person, and I do have a pretty high understanding, or I don't know what the word is, appreciation for the role that an insurance advisor can play, because I've seen my shares of buildings burnt down and slip and fall claims. I've had work comp claims that were, I got stories that just roof replacements. In the property business, you got lots of that sort of thing. And so But then also for my employees, their benefits. That's actually a very personal aspect of my business. My partner and I spend a great deal of time talking about how do we make it better for our employees. We have three kind of perspectives on that. Is any benefit change we're going to make, we want our advisor to understand that it has to provide equal or better benefits for our employees, and then hopefully, if that's the number one test. Number two test is that it either saves money or at least doesn't incur a tremendous cost either for the employee or for the employer. And then third is if I can reduce administrative burden for my HR director, who's a fantastic gal. That's a bonus. And those are my sort of guiding principles. And then from there, I can discuss anything, any creative idea, any solution. And so we've sort of established some of that, and that's helpful. I don't know if that's getting at your question, but we've had lots of years and lots of changes with that sort of thing.
How many over the years? I don't know how many advisors you've worked with, insurance advisors, but how many do you feel like have had that more advisory model versus more of the commoditized?
Well, for our property and casualty, we worked with one agent for a long time, and is a man that I trust significantly, and is a friend. And only recently we've shifted, made a decision to go to a different, and we probably stayed with our prior agent on the property and casualty side because of a relationship, maybe even longer than the price would have dictated, because we knew that we were getting, when something hit the fan, we knew we had that benefit of the advisor and his strength and capacity and his willingness to go to bat for us and that sort of thing. So we're more oriented towards relationships. I mean, that's a very hard choice for us. I can understand where other businesses make it based entirely on premium, and that's not who.
There's some, obviously.
So when you're looking at that, like when you say, relationship, and we place a lot of value on relationship. Mm-hmm. Like, break relationship down for me. Like, specifically, what are you looking for? Because it's not just somebody that's like going to pick up the phone call when the building's on fire or something. Like, what do you? How do you define it?
Okay, well, actually, when the building's, if the water tower is draining into our shopping center, I do want that person to answer the phone.
Sure,
because I've had that happen.
First call 911, then call.
Exactly.
Water tower draining into your.
Oh yeah.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, we've had some crazy stuff over the years.
I can imagine.
It goes back to what we've been talking about, is asking questions and knowing our business, and then guiding us through the minefield to avoid stepping on the mines, or across to avoid the trapdoors. I mean, that is a business, and I try to remind myself, like, for example, okay, I'm talking to a tenant about potentially relocating, and with the one I was telling you about the irritants and stuff like that. Well, they had ceiling tiles that were damaged by a roof leak. Mm-hmm. That happens. Every center has roof leaks. It's no big deal. But it's not his business is his business, and it's not going and trying to find ceiling tiles that match that exact ceiling tile. Whereas we're in the property business, and my maintenance guys can find that in a heartbeat. This particular person's property management company didn't see it that way, and so that's an irritant for him. He's got to spend his time not producing whatever his business is about. He's looking for the right ceiling tile. Yeah. So being in that advising perspective, finding solutions, making things easier for people, and that's what our insurance agent, that's what we were looking for, and had. They knew, look, here are the challenges that are coming down the road. I'll tell you, like, one that worries me is cyber. And I hope that we're in the right hands. That we've got the right coverages on that sort of thing, because that stuff's. I'm in real estate. I don't even want to know what that's all about.
Yeah.
I just want to know that somebody's
The
got
more
it.
I know, the less I want to know about it.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
There's nothing good at the bottom of that box.
No.
Yeah. So,
Well, that's interesting. So, real quick, was there a particular process in your mind, like that they kind of brought you through to ultimately come up and be like, hey, we feel like we should spend some time on cyber and help educate you around this, and here are the threats for your specific business and what we might be able to do about it, and blah, 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 blah? Or is it just like time and conversations with them where you've built trust and that's kind of bank that over time to get to a point where you're like, man, I feel good? Does that make sense? Is it more kind of process oriented where you can kind of point to something and be like, hey, no, I mean, yeah, we went through specific stuff and we started talking about this, and that's how he adds value, he or she adds value? Or is it more centered around like just that relationship that's built over time?
yeah, I think it's the latter. And to be clear, when we're talking about this particular subject, my partner, who's our CFO as well, he's the primary guy on that particular piece of the business. So I mean, I could talk in generalities, but I do know that the relationship built over time. I've had the reverse is true as well. I mean, we had a relationship on a situation where we had an advisor and for many years, and the process was always the same, and it would always end up with, here's the price, and we'd say, got to go back and do something about that, and then come back, and here it is, and that's it.
Go put that back in the machine and crank it out one more time.
Exactly. And there was no, understanding of what's changing with our business. In fact, they didn't even know, that we were a broker, like a third-party broker. Man, my phone's ringing off the wall tonight.
For their deals.
Yeah. This isn't
We're
live
streaming.
Yeah. We're like, I want to talk to this guy. That's great.
Yeah.
No, but if they don't even know your business enough to know, well, I mean, number one, they're not going to know how to take care of you. And number two is they're never going to send you a referral, which, you would think that if I'm spending a ton of money, maybe, hey, if you decide to move your offices, you'll want to use our services. The advisor I'm talking about before, the one that took the time over the years to develop that relationship, not even hesitation when they were relocating. It was, you guys are going to help us. I mean, that's just, it was not even a question, and it was fantastic. Those sorts of things, they make a difference. But also because, he understood us.
Knowledge too.
Yeah.
I think that's what we talk about. There's relationships different to everybody, but sometimes it's take my clients golfing and do whatever, and which all that's great, and you can have a personal relationship, but I think the better definition is just what you were describing, is they know deeply who we are, what we do, and they take the time to understand that, versus just in the commoditized world, it's getting the minimum amount of information to go spit out the quote and take it back one more time to get a better price, and here we are at the end. Versus here's the best fit for you guys based on what I know today, and here's why. And I think that's how we kind of define the relationship on this show. And Ryan was talking about process. There's some firms that put that into a process to make sure that they're doing that from the start. And sometimes it's just over time that happens. So,
what percentage of additional premium would you pay to keep that relationship?
Now you're going to be getting a lot of calls after this.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't know how to put a number on that, but it's worth something. There is, I mean, let me try and put it in
other industries. They quantify it, and they're like, an advisor sitting in this seat is worth 3%, or 5%, or whatever it is that can add value back to what you're doing.
I guess I would say, after listening, I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts too. Tell me some stories about what, like I was telling you about the things that we, I can save you this hassle by avoiding this type of financing. Or I'll give you another analogy, like you want to buy a shopping center, and I look at the sales report of the tenants, and I can go, this tenant is underperforming at you're probably going to lose that tenant. That might be why they're trying to sell the center. Or I can look at the rent roll and say, well, this tenant should be paying more rent. You've got a lot of upside here. So, this is a good opportunity, that sort of thing. What are some of the, casualty losses or things that you guys run into that help you relate that type of thing? I mean,
excuse me. Well, I think it's a good question in that depends on the industry a lot of times, so like for real estate, it's going to be much different as you were talking about the losses you've experienced versus a contractor or whatever it is. But a lot of times we try to focus on those controllable factors. What are the things that you can control as the business owner, the business leader? And let's make sure we've got those dialed in. We can't control the hailstorm that's going to come through. Can we put a better roof on? Sure. But there's a cost benefit analysis to all of that. But we can't control those types of things. Let's make sure that the risk management tools and strategies that we can put in place, we're at least evaluating, right? Not every one of them is going to make sense. And a lot of times people, especially in our industry, think it's the insurance policy. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to provide insurance for all these different things, when in reality, that's one of the 5 risk management techniques that we can implement when it comes to your business. And so really it's approaching it from that aspect of, let's understand your business, let's understand the risks you're facing, and then let's make sure we're using all the tools and strategies available to us to do that. I don't know if I have specific examples off the top of my head, I guess, but you think about things like the cyber is just such a good one right now, that it's such a high priority for all businesses that come up that, everybody needs to be thinking about, and that's one that always comes up.
I'd take it higher level, honestly, because, in our opinion, the vast majority of today, the risk management advice is product driven, right? And a lot of that, as we've talked about on the show, is because that's currently how people in the insurance advice world get compensated. It's really hard to do risk management for some firm unless if that firm is buying a product from you, then you can afford to implement some sort of risk management advice.
Right.
But it's having a model where you can have conversations and be able to provide product, but be able to elevate over that and make sure that you're not concentrated on just the problem that you're solving with the product, but running an overarching strategy. So one that I'm involved in all the time is exit planning. And, it's companies go 30 plus years with talking to their insurance advisor about what happens if my building burns down. Mm-hmm. Nobody's talking to them about what happens when they want to retire and exit. And they're not going to die, they're not going to get disabled, but they're going to retire and they want to go live a long, happy life, but they don't have a plan, so they leave 50% of their money on the table. And now their future life is at risk. Who's talking about that, and what product can you buy to get that? There isn't one. So good risk managers are going to come in and they're going to have, we can get very detailed in that conversation, but it starts high level. So it's a process that you can start to kind of take a 360-degree view around the company and really understand. If you're dealing with a nonprofit, board of directors, things like that, it's not going to apply. You're not going to have that type of conversation. If you're dealing with a family-owned business, they got 2 kids in it and whatnot, and you start to go in and you ask open-ended questions, and you listen and you do the stuff, and you're going to start to understand, like, well, shoot, what's the future of the company look like? And before you know it, honestly, that's a pretty important one. They're going to be like, well, shit, I don't have a plan. And you're like, okay, well, that's a problem. Because I can tell you your odds of your building lighting on fire, oddly enough, right? I can talk to actuaries and they can tell me that. What you don't know is like when you're not going to want to do this anymore, and then how much money you're going to get and how you're going to get it and how that's going to help you go live your lifelong goals. So it's a long answer, but I'd say there's a lot of value that exists above the products that we're really trying to extract and lay on the table.
Have you ever seen a situation where somebody you gave advice to who just chose to look based on the premium? I chose to go this route, and then they lived to, regret that.
Have we ever had that happen?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, that's the thing that I'm curious. I bet you guys the stories would be hair raising.
I mean, we can have some of those over our whiskey, but
Okay.
but no, I mean, yeah, they're all over because sadly, our industry is still very much training clients to view it that way, that it's all the same, products are all the same, let alone the strategy. Yeah, it's just based on price. It gets a little bit, at the larger business level, I think that's a little less impactful because business owners are thinking through it a little more, but you get to the smaller business and certainly in the personal line side, home and auto stuff, it's just pushed so hard that everything's the same and it's just all about price that people make those poor decisions.
Yeah.
When it's because the product alone is not the same, let alone finding the right product to fit in the strategy that we need to have. So
it's not the advisors either, it's not the sales people really. It's kind of the game of insurance. That's really what's driving it. It's like the industry doesn't do ourselves any favors at all because you watch a Big Ten football game, it's all price and
Yes.
property coverage related and da-da-da-da-da, and they give you the impression that it's like, well, just come over here and you can save 15%, 15 minutes, and da-da-da-da-da. And of course you can do that, but stop and think about it for a minute. Like, there's no free lunch. So what's going on, and what's on the other side of that 15% savings? And, if you can have those types of conversations, you can weigh the options, but there's nobody that's providing that type of objective advice, I feel, at least today still.
Certainly not at a consumer level like
No.
that. But on the business level, that's what you're targeting. That's what you guys are trying to really grow.
Yep.
Yeah, we're trying to change the whole paradigm from just that, going out and providing products, a lot of which businesses have to have, some of which, they need and have bought over time. But it's quantifying and adding value over and beyond what we do. With the kind of the mindset and the goal that we kind of try to work towards is who cares what the products are or that we even provide them. We want to sit in an agnostic seat that just says, if XYZ company have the best products, fine. We're going to use those and you're still going to pay us for our advice. It's that good. And we're close.
Yeah.
We're not close. We're doing it, but we're close to being able to do it in all aspects of our business.
It's a fantastic goal. Yeah.
It's a big one.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a paradigm shift,
Yeah, some of it is hindered by the insurance carriers. They're not filed to remove commission out or to do things differently than we just have for 100 years. So there's some of that stuff too that you're battling regulatory bodies on, So
I mean, there's some accounts where we're making 1,000% more revenue on our advice than we are the insurance revenue, where we could just tell a carrier to stop it. We don't want your money because we're going to make our money on advice, but they just can't do it. They can't strip out the commission, save the money for the client and not send us a check.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing.
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting business. It's not, there are times, I mean, as complicated as commercial real estate can be, the model itself is a fairly well understood model, and so you guys are sort of charting new territory in developing something that's, when I listen to what prior podcasts, and you kind of have legs of the stool. You get your accountant, you get your your attorney. You might have your financial advisor, and then if you're working in if you're working in a building, then you'd have your real estate. Most people would not go into that business without a real estate advisor. Mm-hmm. But then, you guys form another leg of that stool, and if somebody's going in and making a major decision without, just going off of the commercial they saw, they're probably leaving a lot of risk on the table.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, educating people is a tough thing to do. But, it starts with, you guys have a passion for this business. That is obvious by the fact that you've got this podcast going, which I think is fantastic. So that, to me, if you have a passion for the business, that eventually becomes very evident to people around you and to people who are customers or potential customers or referral sources. Yeah.
Totally. Well, it's been fun, and our, the podcast is, we feel like we can get enough of this conversation and narrative moving, maybe clients start to expect that, and it becomes more of the norm versus just what people are used to and what the commercials say, so that's the goal. But Big Al, I'm imagining we are probably at our time. No, we're good? No, that was fun.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
Great
good
conversation.
Perspective on writing these, but I think I'm ready for a whiskey.
Let's do it.
You might have tequila.
All good. Yeah. Yeah, whatever you like, but I'm going for a whiskey.
There you go.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on, Brian.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to Getting Past the Premium. We are excited to continue breaking down barriers and finding solutions together. If you would like to reach out regarding anything you heard in today's episode, find links and contact info in the description. Until next time, have a great day, and let's continue getting past the premium.